Hi, we're Fat Salad, and welcome to Lining.
So, guys, for those who don't know your work, could you just tell us a little bit about yourselves?
So yeah, we're Fat Salad. We're an indie rock band from South London, originally made up of three brothers and a friend from school. As time has gone on, members have changed, but still two brothers, myself, Elliott, lead guitarist, and my brother Aydan, a lead singer. And then we have Natan on drums and we have Rob on bass. We've been going for 3 years now, and um, we are just on the cusp of releasing our debut EP. Yeah, we've been releasing music since 2023. And since then, we've played an array of festivals, sold out shows in London, and we're about to embark on our first sort of very small national tour.
So, you guys have been at this for a little while. What would you say to someone who's trying to break into their own career as an artist for the first time?
I think me personally, just like reflecting back on when I kind of started myself, I think the key is just to throw yourself really into the deep end. Like you want to be in a position where you can just make as many mistakes as you want early on in that, like the start of your music career. I think that's where you kind of learn the most as well. You learn what mistakes you can make again and the ones that really did cost you a lot, but it's such an important thing to do, and I think people should be welcoming those mistakes and not be afraid of them. And I think it kind of makes you a little bit untouchable as well, like a little bit, you can't be defeated if you're sat there smiling in the face of like any mistake that you might make and knowing you can bounce back. So that's the kind of first off advice that I would give. But I don't know if you've got any hidden gems that you would pass on.
I would say, I think it has to come from a place of authenticity. The number of bands we've seen that have started with us, but it's been from, well, this is the angle we're going to brand and we're going to make it look like this and it's going to be very like this, and sort of pinching other people's examples and trying to, or we're going to sound exactly like this genre. They're the ones that sort of lose interest quite fast because it's not coming from the heart. And as corny as that sounds, I think that matters a lot. You all have to really love it because let's face it, there's no money at the start or the middle, as far as I'm concerned.
Across all the industry, I think it's becoming more and more difficult for people to monetize their music and actually make a living out of it, you know.
Definitely. It's certainly not in streams. And you just sort of have to, almost like Aidan said, you're untouchable. Just sort of go with what feels right, make mistakes. After a year, reassess and go, well, we shouldn't have done that, but there's no one to tell you not to do that. So go and do that if it feels right. And you have to go there to come back. I think that's our philosophy as a band. And there's been a few things we've done that I think are great mistakes to have made early on, because you like to think we're not going to make them now.
Yeah, do you guys have any examples of when you guys have had errors, what sort of judgment calls you've made that you wouldn't go around making again?
Think things to do with playing show times. There's been a couple of times where we didn't know, or well, playing a show in general, we didn't know that the sound engineer is actually there to work for you. So there's been a couple of times where we've basically been a doormat for the sound man just to make his day a little bit easier, even though the event as a whole has suffered. And it takes confidence to be turn around and go, yeah, no, we need to fix this because it doesn't sound good. And again, that comes from a place of sort of imposter syndrome and sort of lack of confidence and lack of self-worth within the industry. But at the end of the day, it's a gig's about the music and it needs to sound good for people to enjoy it.
Of
Um,
course. Would you
so
say that knowing your sound and what you should sound like, especially for live music, do you feel like that's really important?
I think it's still an ongoing battle for us. I think for everyone, um, because you can get as close as you want in the studio to a live sound, but that's not reflective of a Friday night in a London sticky floor venue where you got a sound guy being paid not loads of money to sort of half be there and half pay attention to you. And then you have 5 minutes to sound check. You're 9 times out of 10, you're sharing a back line. So trying to distill the studio live feel into an actual live situation, it's hard to do. And I think that takes a lot of skill. And I think that takes time. The number of times my guitar's been too loud, my
Yeah.
guitar's been too quiet, Aydan's vocals haven't been loud enough. And you got people in the audience going, this wasn't sounding right. But at the end of the day, we had a 5-minute sound check and we just sort of, you're almost going through the motions doing that sound check because it's 5 minutes at the end of the day. And so
Do you think that rolling with the punches and moving with the changes, do you feel like that is one of the most important qualities that an artist can have?
you have to be adaptable.
Yes and no. I think at the start, like 100%, but I feel like you roll with more punches than you need to. I think the important takeaway is to learn what punches you need to take and what punches you don't. So like, I think Elliott's example of the sound engineer is like perfect. It's like, even though we now know kind of more so of what sound that we have and the things we like Elliott, you've said it there. There's a couple consistent errors that we have, which is you're too loud, my vocals aren't high enough. So the easiest fix to avoid that punch, as we're saying, would be to, all right, let's go into it with Elliott's sound a little bit lower, my vocals a little bit higher, so that we're minimizing that chance of that happening. So I think it's 100% so important to be versatile and be adaptable to change, but also just know what changes you need to have and what things you don't need to take. That's what I would say.
And on the topic of change, I know that you guys have recently had a bit of a lineup change. Could you tell us some more about that and what sort of things you've learned from it?
Originally, it was our brother Aaron on drums. And that's how the whole project sort of came to fruition. And a mate of ours from school who was in Aydan and Aaron's year. Then through one way or another, Aaron went traveling. George went off to do his own thing in the acting space. And suddenly, within the same 6 months, we sort of found ourselves without a drummer and without a bass player. It's weird how the universe works because we were sat in the studio and we are like, oh, we need a drummer to replace Aaron. And the producer, Natan, just put up his hand and was like, I can play drums. Cool. Yeah, no problem. So that we sort of landed on our feet there. And then our bass player, Rob, we actually played a show with him at the Macbeth a year and a bit ago now.
I think it was
Maybe
longer than
2
that.
years.
Yeah,
Maybe
2
even 2
years.
years. And he was on I forget the name of the band, but he was playing for a support band of our show. We were headlining. And then he just happened to see our advert within about the first 24 hours of putting it up and just said, yeah, I've seen you guys play. I like you. Like, let's do it. So had a couple of auditions. Here's the first sort of like fit, so to speak. And before you know it, we got a brand new band. And I think I can say it's been a positive impact in terms of when everyone comes from the same area, the same sort of sphere of influences, it's very easy just to get sort of not blindsided, but sort of tunnel vision about
Yeah.
how music should sound, how the band works, how creative ideas work. And suddenly having these external influences, someone who literally works in the studio for their day job. And then you've also got a bass player who's just comes from a different sphere of music. And it's just this cross section where it's all these great ideas coming through, all this fresh inspiration. So sort of really breathe some fresh air into the whole sort of fat salad atmosphere, I guess.
Cool. And while you're probably sad to see the other band members go, Aaron, moving forwards is what you guys have done quite well. You guys have taken those steps by the sounds of things. Elliott, you touched on inspiration there. Is that something that you find strikes you consistently? Or is there a really big amount of you sort of pushing forward day to day to try and create something?
I think for a long time, personally, I thought inspiration's always sort of comes and goes. Inspiration itself, sort of discipline and creativeness, I think are different things. So inspiration's sort of your spark for your fire, and that comes and goes, and you have to use that as it comes and goes, but you can't force inspiration. It's either there or it's not. It's like a light. And then I think discipline provides the space for creativity and the flames of the fire, if we're using that analogy, to sort of breathe and run. Because if you're not disciplined, you're never creating the time to be creative, and creativity demands time. I think you can be inspired while you're busy, but then you also need the time to iron out an idea. I find when I'm really busy, if work's really busy, if the band's really busy and we're we're doing a podcast, and we're doing rehearsals, and we've got press shots this day, then we're doing something else the other day, and then we've got to film a load of content. No one's creative in that sort of time. There's a reason bands have big gaps between albums, because you need it. But I think, and especially in this day and age, I think the more content that's out there, the more sort of frivolous songs are now with the advent of streaming. I think it devalues the creative space, and people are less creative because they're more concerned about feeding the algorithm. And I think that's its own issue, and that's its own question. But I think space is created through discipline, and discipline comes from you prioritizing sort of creating that space and that time of the day. So that's my answer.
So you just touched on there the podcast that you guys do. That's the Fat Salad podcast. Aydan, what sort of topics do you guys cover? How do you separate that from your regular social media channels as a band?
Yeah, I mean, I think we must have had that idea. It's been over a year now. We've released a podcast every week. I think we're up to have we broken 83? Yeah, so we're on 83 episodes now, and we've had guests on. We like to. I mean, initially we started it just as a channel to like honestly, we were chatting a lot of crap, just like a good old waffle podcast, right? And then we thought, hang on a sec, like let's kind of start directing this in a more mature fashion. So as we've gone on and we've wanted to talk about more serious topics and more things that resonate hard with us and other artists, like our recent episodes have all been about, for example, I think we had a half an hour chat about how we've managed to make this, financially more manageable for us, because that's such a big concern. Everyone thinks, the limiting factor is like getting out there. So I know the limiting factor is a lot of the time is finance. That's the thing that's held us back, I think, the most, and meant that we've had to be the most, savage in our decision making. And so that's the kind of direction where we're taking it. And do you know what? I think it's really resonating well. Like there's so many bands out there, and it's great hearing, in my perspective, when I've heard other bands talk about it. It's lovely hearing someone else's perspective on a situation you're currently experiencing. It's the easiest way to learn. If something like we're trying to provide the means for other people to not make the same mistake as us and just learn along the journey with us as well.
So the podcast for you guys, do you still consider that to be, I guess, a side hustle compared to the main goal of being the music? Would you agree with that?
I mean, everything's a side hustle till something makes it big, right? So
yeah.
I mean, I would argue. I mean, the band, the Fat Salad. We do that. That is the music. We rely on that, and then I think what we wanted is another spinning plate to kind of support that as well. If the podcast does well, it automatically drives traffic to the band as well, because it's what we're talking about. So they both kind of work in a positive feedback kind of loop. So if one does well, the other one does as well. So I think that was the idea from us, and so far I think it's panned out quite well.
And with that, and this is one for both of you guys, with that, the podcasting and the content creation and the working with social media alongside the music, what are some strategies that you guys have used to make that more financially stable for you?
Well, now I'll let you jump in on this. I know you're hungry for it.
Am I? Yeah. I guess in terms of, so do you mean specifically finances regarding the social media and the content, or
the ways that
picture?
You guys have, the broader picture, the entire concept of Fat Salad as a whole, how has that become more financially profitable maybe for you?
Okay, so originally we didn't have a clue what we're doing, and now we have 1% more of a clue. But so originally we sort of dove in at the deep end. I think Aydan will agree. We booked an expensive recording studio. We did everything, expensive sort of rehearsal studios. And we were just trying to do everything the best we possibly could with the budget we had. But the problem is you get really good quality work, but you just don't go very far because your budget runs out very, very quickly. So originally we spent a lot of money on recording, and then we didn't even consider that you needed a budget for advertising your song. In fact, we didn't even know you had to advertise your song. Like a lot of bands, you think you just put it at Spotify and then people go listen to it, obviously. And unfortunately,
I mean, that is a big mistake. People don't understand that there has to be sort of, nowadays especially, that people do struggle with having maybe an atypical marketing campaign. And
Yeah.
social media is a great tool for that, for you allowing that on a unsigned independent artist basis as well. But how do you guys sort of continue moving that forwards? What's one way that you made it more economical?
So essentially, we had to flip a couple of things on their head. So originally, we were doing gigs with promoters in London, and that meant we weren't getting a very big proportion of the ticket money. So long story short, we started putting on our own self-promoted shows, which meant we made the bulk of the ticket money once we paid support bands and covered our venue fees and the sound there. And that made the quality of the event better. And it also meant we had more control over the event, and it also meant we made more money from actually playing a show, selling tickets. And that enabled us to sort of have a bigger budget with regard to how we release music. And then how we release music's also changed. Originally, we were going to the studio, like I said. We've been to some very nice studios in London, but that's just not sustainable, especially the amount of music you need to sort of be releasing to mature artistically, right?
Of
So
course.
after releasing our first 4 or 5 singles, we've made the decision now to actually record drums in the studio, because they're very hard to sort of record in a sort of home studio setting. And then the rest of the guitars and the vocals and a lot of the production has actually been done in various home studios across London through our network of friends. And then and then we're spending a little bit of money on mixing, but that's still a fraction of the cost that it would cost to go record at a studio. And we can record more songs at a better rate without losing much quality at all. In fact, I'd argue the quality's improved tenfold,
Yeah.
because we're not under a time duress. So creatively, we can be a little bit better about it. And that money that we've made from gigs that hasn't been spent at the studio can now be spent actually sort of promoting the song. We can afford to sort of invest a bit more in content and Instagram ads. And unfortunately, the way Instagram is now, uh, you have to pay to play, because they don't promote many, if any, sort of content producers pages that aren't sort of actively putting money into the system, unless you get the freak shot of going viral. But even if you go viral, this is where it gets tricky. Even if you get viral, you don't necessarily have super high engagement, and you don't necessarily, all those people aren't necessarily listening to your song. So you run the risk of, if you do go viral or get really big on Instagram organically, for whatever that's worth, there's no actual money exchange, and they're not actually buying into you as a band. And you run the risk of just becoming essentially a content clown, for want of a better term, where you're just sort of juggling around, you're racking up all these views, but it's not actually feeding into what you love doing, and it's not making the shows better, and it's not advancing you as an artist. So it's a little bit long-winded, but that's our financial model as it stands.
No, no. Well, most people don't have a financial model when they're working for something like this. So I think
I only
that's
just realized we had one.
well. I mean, everything comes off the dome. That's just how it is, really. You mentioned the concept of virality there, and there are a lot of people who sort of they're chasing the algorithm. They're looking for what the next trend is, or whatever that may be. Bandwagon hopping, essentially. How do you guys feel about that? How do you guys manage the idea of the algorithm within the modern music scene? How do you manage that as artists?
I think that's a difficult question to answer, Joe. I mean, I think first of all, I don't think social media is such an important factor nowadays when you're coming to, like we've spoken about, marketing strategy, pairing that with your release, the branding of your release. Everything is like, like, unfortunately nowadays, the music and having quality music is about 50% of the battle. On the side of that, you need a great marketing campaign and great branding for it, for that song to really go well and you actually make profit from it, attract more people to the band, and like have them feed into you making it financially viable. I think obviously there are positives to going viral, which is you do get the attention to your page, you get the attention if it's with your song, for example, you get the attention to your song. But I think the important thing is that needs to convert to something substantial, because what virality can happen in 6 hours or whatever, you can get 1 million views or 2 million views or whatever, and then no one can ever hear from you again. So once you do have that as well, you have to capitalize on it. So you need to kind of keep feeding it so that that can then become like the foundations to your social media network. And it needs to be set up in a way that that can convert, like Elliott said, into your streams, into your music, and have people buy into you as a person, you as the band. And that's the way you make longevity with it. However, virality is such a fleeting thing. It's like, it's very difficult to actually capitalize on it when you do have it. So I think when it comes to that, I think what me and Elliot have done, and the rest of the band for that matter, have done well, is that that's not something that we've ever thought this has to happen. If everything else in the band we have going smoothly and going well, we can be happy with that, and virality would just be a cherry on top of that. Do you know what I mean? But if you have virality without the foundations that you've created and everything else going stronger, you actually haven't got that much to stand on. So for us, it's about creating substance where we can and have control over it. And if the external factors like virality come into it, then that's a great thing, and hopefully we'll be in a position to jump on that.
So at the end of the day, that's sort of the concept of virality is just an extra. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
do you feel like creators need to ignore that with the algorithm and sort of just do what they're doing to push themselves forward, regardless of the numbers of social media?
I think it's important. I'm not saying it's a redundant thing, but I'm saying as an artist, your priority is making sure that you've got the right sound for you. You are authentic. You have your own. When I say the foundations, I mean the building blocks to have the right thing, a good thing, right? And then virality as a second thing. If that comes, you've already got everything so solid in your smaller network, it should just fit into the bigger network. That's what I'm saying, rather than I'm not saying it's important, because I think it is. But if you have virality without anything to stand on, it won't amount to anything. So this is where I'm saying have control over the things you can, and then the virality should take you to where you need to be if you've got everything else sorted.
It seems like for you guys, the concept of social media very, very well links into the concept of creative identity, that you've got this image of yourselves that bleeds into the music, the podcast, the social media. How did you guys go about finding that creative identity for the first time?
It's got to be trial and error, hasn't it? I think we had an idea, and I think our personalities came into that, and then it was a case of like, let's see what feels right. And for something to feel right, it means you have to make those mistakes and then post a lot and get everything out there, and then you kind of figure out what goes well with your crowd and what goes well with you. I don't know if you have another take on that as well.
Yeah, pretty much comes back to the first question we started with. You just have to have a stab and just like see what's out there and see what works for you. And if it's authentic, then that's probably your best bet. And if it feels right, that's also your best bet. And then do that, and then get some feedback, play a show. And then how did it feel while you were playing it? I think we've had songs before where we played them on stage, and then we've come back and gone, you know what? Nah, it sounded really good in a rehearsal room, but it's just not for us. It's not it's just, yeah, it's like the universe has decided for us. So we're not going to do that. And yeah, what Aydan said.
I guess it comes back to that concept of the adaptability that you guys have. And I feel like the way that you're talking about this is like a big strength for you guys. So when you're looking for your sound and what sounds good, do you feel like the goalpost is forever moving? Once you're settled on something, you feel like, well, you've got to search for that next thing.
I feel like the moment you have an idea in your head, that's exactly what this needs to sound like, and this is what a Fat Salad song is. That's the moment you need to grow up as a musician and as a band and as a creative, and you have to move the goalposts, because otherwise, I don't know. Some bands get away with releasing the same album 3 or 4 times, but I don't think that interests any of us. And I think it's also doing the fans a disservice. I mean, I'm going to call out the Foo Fighters here, but they're just churning out the same sort of thing over and over again. And it's that thing where it's homogenized into like one generic Foo Fighters song for me. And yes, there's some outliers in there, and some are better than others, but I feel like the moment you've done that, you need to move on. Just even as a creative, just to be artistically satisfied. And I think you have a responsibility to push boundaries within what you as a creative and you as an individual within a creative collective like a band can sort of offer.
Aydan, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. Like, I've always been brought up on the fact that as an artist, like, you know, musician, your job is to kind of keep pushing yourself, push the boundaries. I mean, I've got, like, you know, another band, Catfish and the Bottlemen, where, like, I really like some of their songs. However, like, if you listen to a song on their first album, a song on their last album, it's like, for me, like, there is no difference in sound. So, like, they had the formula, they nailed the formula. The songs are good, they're catchy, and they got to people. However, it's just like, I also feel like you have an added responsibility to go, okay, we've got the formula, but how do we just make this more better? Like, I don't know, for me, that's always been a big thing. And it's also like, it's just fun as an artist. Like, your job is also to have fun. And when we're in the studio and we're playing around with ideas and we're like, someone goes, that's great, that's cool. And you have that kind of, that spark of like creativity, and you never would have found it unless you're all in that room at that right time. That's kind of what it's about, and jumping on those moments. And I think that that's really kind of embodies what it is to be an artist in this day and age.
And I think that idea of sometimes there's just a moment that really has come through with a lot of the people that I've spoke to in the previous episodes. Building and creating, but also having fun. You know, the people that make it the longest are the people that don't give up on it and they won't give up on it because it's fun. They enjoy it. At the end of the day, anything else for them would be really boring. But for some people, getting that longevity and enjoying it for a long period of time is very, very difficult. And I just want to get you guys' thoughts. What would you say to someone on the edge of perhaps giving up on a career in music?
I would say you have to look at the reasons why you're giving up. Um, if it's because financially I'm not sort of living in the Playboy mansion with my new haircut and I've got a yacht and all that sort of stuff, then you're into it for the wrong reasons and maybe, yeah, maybe turn around. But yeah, you have to just really love it. And if you really, really love it, and you still feel like you're giving up, then maybe you're trying it. Maybe it comes back to the problem of not being authentic. And that's what I mean. Like, I think me and Aidan went to a networking event a year or so ago, maybe slightly longer, and someone was basically saying how there's like not a load of money until you make it in air quotes. And I remember I just turned around to him. I was like, "That's fine because you just get paid, and we just get paid later. Like it doesn't bother us. The money, it can be there and it can not be there, but either way, I'm going around to Aidan's house or Aidan's coming around here. We're going to play guitars together. If we've turned the microphone on while that happens, then that's cool. We release it as a band, that's cool, but you just have to like it. I think there's a lot of pressure on, again, the phrase making it. You just have to, you really, and it's so corny, but it's so true. You have to enjoy the journey. You have to enjoy getting the train to rehearsals. You have to enjoy playing a gig where not many people turned up or the sound was just crap. You just have to be able to enjoy that, look at your drummer while it's happening and just laugh. Because that's what it's about. You remember those moments. And then when you do get a little bit of success or 100 people, 150 people turn up to a show and they're singing the words back to you, then you're rewarded tenfold and you forget all about that. But I feel like if you're on the verge of giving up, look at the circumstances. Are you putting too much pressure on it to happen? And do you need it to happen for the wrong reasons? And if so, then go be an investment banker or something.
I've had that exact phrase said. People have said.
Oh,
I
really?
think a couple episodes ago, verbatim got said, "Go be an investment banker. If you are in this, if you are in this to be a millionaire rock star, no, you might be a rock star, but maybe you're not going to be a millionaire. Not this week, eh?" Aydan, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Elliot, you touched on a few good points, like that pressure when you start a band. That I also think that it's an external pressure. Like when you start a band, you start making music and putting it out there. It's a risk because it's you and it's like a raw representation of yourself. So I think there's that automatic assumption that if you don't start making millions within a year, then like, oh, the music can't be that good and you can't be that good of a person. And it's not for you, where it's like, that's just not the case. And I think what's really important in it, I think I will not to, toot our own horn or anything, but I think of being a very good point is just to be patient. And that's something that we know that this is not an all night job. This is not an overnight job where like you'll wake up tomorrow and like, yeah, you have millions in your account. This is let's just slowly and steady win this race or get somewhere and just enjoy that graft and enjoy the kind of that, crawling through the mud aspect of it. Because it is important. And I think if someone is on the verge of, giving up on the music, I think it's also important to address that being an artist doesn't always mean that you're producing music at all times, right? You can have a timeout. You can have that. Things get in the way. Life happens, right? But I think being an artist is also being patient with yourself and then knowing that you're going to come back to that and start re-delivering it and doing it for the right reasons and not doing it because there's this pressure to make it big and put like, millions of dollars on the table. And I think you just got to remind yourself of the reason you started it, which like for me, it was like, I remember when I was younger and I was looking up, I think my dad must have taken us to a festival. And I think I can't have been more than like 12 or 14. It was like a day festival. And I remember looking up on stage at these guys and they're playing music. And like part of me was just like, wow, these guys, one, they know how to play an instrument. Two, they're doing it in front of a crowd. Whether they're doing covers or originals didn't matter to me. It was like the sheer fact that someone's got up on stage and gone, this is fun, I'm going to do it. That was unbelievable to me. And I think the fact that I can now say that I do that myself is like, what a privilege to be able to sit here and go, like, I've worked hard enough that I can now deliver that same thing that I thought was so special back then. And I still think it's special. And I think if you're on the verge of giving up, just remember why you fell in love, like writing music and doing it. And that should be enough just to go take the pressure off you and get back into it. That would be my 50 cents.
Mm. And I think that also, I think that's a great tip, but I think it also goes for people who are not artists or producers themselves. There are maybe music business people, maybe they're doing, that side of things. It also goes for that. You got into this as opposed to, I don't know, say managing something else because you loved it. You loved music. And that's why you got to keep knocking at it. You've just got to keep breaking down walls and keep going at it. You mentioned there about the concept of the festival and you went there and you felt inspired as a young guy. Is it nice to be able to sort of maybe be that for somebody else? That it's like a cycle of artistry, maybe without knowing it, that you've inspired somebody else to pick up the piano or the guitar or buy a drum kit for the first time.
I think it's such a beautiful concept, isn't it? That like me at a young age has looked up at someone and been like, wow, that's what I want to. That just is screaming out to me. Something in my heart is telling me to go work hard so I can do that. And then like to then have the potential opportunity to deliver that back to someone. Well, that's a full circle moment. I've definitely had it on stage where I've had people come up to me and be like how have you done that? How have you guys played these songs that well? Or how do you write them? And you can look at someone in the eye and you can see they're visibly inspired by a show that you've just done. And for me, like, that is just like that's more than money in some senses. You can't ask for much more. And for me, like 100%, that is a massive reason why I love doing it, is so you can kind of deliver that back. You can help people out when they feel a little bit lost with music, and I think it is a massive full circle moment. But El, I don't know if you want to jump in there as well.
I think that's the ultimate compliment, right? As you say, that's worth more than any currency, any speedboat. Yeah, that's yeah, for someone to compliment you on the live performance and say they enjoyed it, even more to say they were inspired, then that just sort of validates every sort of hard aspect that every speed bump, every sort of minor inconvenience or major inconvenience, that just validates everything as a project as a whole. Every time we look at sort of the numbers when people stream songs, it's always a pitch me moment where it's even our first single, when it was like 100 people have listened to it within the first couple of hours. I remember I went to where Aaron, the old drummer, our brother, was working, and he was in the kitchen. I was like, mate, I was shaking. I was like, 100 people have listened to it. And then we're both just beyond excited. And that hasn't changed. Every time I open Spotify for artists and I see there's people listen to it and like, I don't know who they are, that's absolutely just mind boggling and just the most sort of humbling and inspiring and sort of, yeah, overwhelming feeling in the world. And it's one of the reasons why you perform, and it's one of the reasons why you put it out there, because that's someone resonating with something that you resonated with enough to put out there and were vulnerable enough to put out there. And yeah, you're reaping the rewards. So yeah.
I think it sounds like that you guys really sort of genuinely love the idea of just being an artist and having someone listen to your music. People complain a lot about the streaming services and stuff and say, oh, it doesn't pay artists well. And yes, that is true. It doesn't. Streaming as a whole on its own isn't completely financially viable. But there is that moment, and you guys have both experienced this, as you said, where you look at that and it's outside of you guys playing a gig. You know, you can go and see someone in the crowd and you can see their face and everything. But it's this idea that around the world, there is someone there listening to your song. Maybe they're in the US, maybe they're in Italy, or maybe they're in wherever. But you can see this, and these are the people around the world that liked your music and want to listen to you and want to hear more of you. Do you feel like that is a benefit of streaming, or do you still feel that like the negatives of the pay and the ownership issues that come with it outweigh that?
I think, I think, I don't know, it gets a bad rep and everyone's like, should streaming happen? Should streaming not happen? Look, it's happened. There's drawbacks. One of the things that's happened is the value of music has decreased because it's so accessible. It's not like you have to. I remember when I was younger and I'd wait to get a CD, and listening to it felt slightly more special because I didn't always have access to it and I have to be in a certain place with the CD player and whatnot. Um, so that's sort of one drawback, but I think there's positives. On the bright sides, there is just so easy to express yourself as an artist now. You just have to have a good idea. I think if anything, there's more value in just constraining yourself and not releasing stuff for the sake of releasing stuff, because the hurdle to record and the hurdle to put stuff out there is so low. A lot of people will just absolutely cram as much out as they can. And I think through doing that, you're not being selective, and being selective is one of the sort of creative tools you have to go, you know what, that sounded good for a minute, but on reflection, I'm not sure. And you have to exercise that more, which I think back in the day you might not have had to do as much. But
Yeah.
because you were confined to a medium, a CD can only fit so many songs and all that sort of stuff. So I think the game's just changed. And I also think it's put more of a emphasis on the live performance of things, because I don't know, there's something about live music that makes it just 10 times more enjoyable. And music online is just sort of, it's just there everywhere. Content is there everywhere. And then personally, in my personal life, I've sort of stepped back a little bit because I'm just like, there's too much here. I'm interested in less. When I go see a band in person though, I just absolutely revel in it. And I think that's made more special by the fact that there's so much music out there online. So yeah, there's pros and cons, but it's not going away. So I think everyone just needs to stop being sad about it and move on. The game's
There
changed.
is, yeah, it has changed. Whether we all like it or not, it's here. And frankly, it's probably here to stay, seriously, with the way that TV has gone as well. And with films and everything else, you know, there's a subscription and there's there's a platform for it. And it makes it so much easier for people to put stuff out. But like you said, it does there is an element of it where it makes live things more special, because now you're the only people in the world that have seen whatever that was at that date at that venue. It gives that, I don't want to say tunnel vision because that has quite negative connotations, but there is that, would you say there's that thing of zooming in on a moment? when you go
Yeah,
see someone?
it provides more value to that moment because as far as I'm concerned, you can't stream moments all the time. And even if you
Yeah.
do, it's not that good because you're not with the people, you're not receiving the energy from the band or vice versa from the crowd. Aidan, what do you think?
I mean, that's something that we definitely, just like sidetracking a tad here, it's something that we definitely like pride ourselves on is our live performance. Just our sheer, like, it's energetic. I'd like to say we're engaging. Like, we want to make sure that you feel like, you know, you spent 12 quid on a ticket. We want to make sure that you feel like you're getting your 12 quid's worth of energy out of us. And like that, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but like at the end of the day, it's like, it's good crack if you can walk on stage, you can strut about. Elliott bought a wireless lead literally for the whole sake of it, so he could jump over barriers and go straight into the crowd and start kicking off in there. And then like small little touches like that, I think are so important. And keeping like your live performance like on cue as well. You need to be tight, but also like how many bands El have we watched that have been like really tight, but like they won't move more than a square inch around where they started performing for 40 minutes, and it's like, well, that's hard to stay engaged with. However, if you're like constantly moving and like the band look like they're enjoying it, I think it's such a valuable piece that, and this is where it's like that is above streaming 100%. You can't stream like a pure moment of like utter engagement from a crowd because this band won't stop moving about and enjoying themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and having that element of, I guess, showmanship. Showmanship is a very important
Yeah.
thing, and that can't be conveyed over a Spotify or Apple Music or, granted, they're great access streaming platforms, but you don't get that authenticity or anything like that. You don't get the
Mm.
silly moments and the sort of the showing off or whatever you want to call it. That's showmanship, I guess. You guys, that's a big part of your idea, the live performances, like you said. Looking forward in the future, what can we expect from you in that regard?
Ooh. Oh, El, I feel, I've got a few things in the back locker, but El, you jump in here.
Is it because you don't know the dates?
Yes.
Typical,
So
typical.
we have got our first single from the debut EP coming out on the
Apparently he doesn't know the dates.
yeah, no, it turns out I don't. The 1st of April, and we
And
are.
what's the single called?
It's called "Lost It for a Minute." Yeah, I think we're all incredibly happy with how it's turned out. It's fresh energy. You've never heard Fat Salad like this, but at the same time, it's so Fat Salad.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then like I say, that's the first single of a 4-song EP,
And what's
and
the name of the EP?
"Lost It for a Minute."
Same title, same title.
Yeah, that was only decided pretty much 24 hours ago. But
Brill.
yeah,
So
so
I'm right on schedule.
Yeah, right
yeah,
on
right on
schedule.
schedule. Yeah,
Brill.
yeah. But yeah, I think we've really matured as a band on this EP. You can definitely hear the influence of the new band members and sort of their creative influence, not even just in terms of sound, but just in terms of how we've developed as a band and sort of become one. When we had the new members initially, it's like any situation where you 50% of the group have changed. It took a little bit of time to meld. And I think through this EP and through the songwriting involved in this EP, that gave us a chance just to intertwine. And now we're one big, massive turbo Power Ranger. And
Hell
it's sounds
yes.
insane.
I like it. I like it. I mean, it sounds like you guys have got a great thing coming up. I'm really looking forward to hearing the album, by the way. We're going to roll round to what is the final question. If you could say one thing to yourselves at the beginning, what would it be?
I think it would be roll with those punches, but know which punches you need to roll with. I think I don't want to overcomplicate it. I think that is a massive part of being an artist and a massive representation of what Fat Salad are and what it is to be a fan of Fat Salad. Is like you just stick with it, you crack on, you get it done, and you learn what you can do better. I think that really encapsulates a lot of us as people.
Yeah, I'd say similar. All advice cancels to zero. So if you listen to absolutely everyone in a room, you'll get nothing done. because everyone's got a different idea of how things should be done. And not all advice is worth taking, which is similar to what Aydan says. But at the same time, be open to advice because, I don't know, we're not that smart. So we had to take a lot of advice. Not all of it was right, but some of it was golden. So you just have to go with your gut and just sort of make decisions and let some of them be bad, let some of them be good. But the most important thing is just to start and find your way.
I think that's a great note to end on, guys. Thank you very much for your time. I just want to ask, where can everybody find you on social media?
You can find us on Spotify, choose all the major streaming platforms. We've got our own YouTube channel, which we have the Fat Salad podcast on. And I think there's an episode where Aydan cooks some burgers, if you're really into that. I should say we've got a headline show at the Old Dispensary on the 10th of April, 2026. And we've got a headline show at the Pipeline in Brighton on the 18th of April. And tickets are available for our Instagram link, through the YouTube, just online. Just Google Fat Salad. Actually, don't do that because loads of salad comes up. So type in Fat Salad Band.
The Instagram account is under the tag @_Fat Salad. So everything's there, all nice collected for you. And yeah, go get it.
Lovely stuff, guys. I'm sure lots of people will check out you cooking burgers, Aydan. I really think that's what they'll be there for. Not the band, not the music,
Not the
of course
band,
not.
just
No,
the smash
just
burgers.
the burgers. Yeah,
They were
just
good
the burgers.
burgers, Joe. They were good burgers.
Better than the music.
Equivalent quality. You pay high money.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, guys. Check out all the music across all streaming platforms. Look out for the Fat Salad Band. Look out for Fat Salad EP coming soon. Check them out on everything.